You're standing at the threshold of something new, a job opportunity, a relationship that could be different, a city that calls your name, and your body says no before your mind can even finish the thought. Your chest tightens, your breath shortens, 1,000 reasons flood in, perfectly logical, completely convincing. The timing isn't right, you need more information, it's too risky. But underneath all those reasons, there's something else, something older, something that learned a long time ago that the unknown is where bad things live. You tell yourself you're being practical, responsible, that you're weighing your options carefully. And maybe you are, but there's a difference between thoughtful consideration and the kind of paralysis that keeps you circling the same safe territory year after year, watching opportunities pass like trains you never quite board. You see others leap, you watch them stumble, recover, stumble again, and part of you admires their courage, while another part catalogs their mistakes, building an ever-growing case for why staying put is the wiser choice. The strange thing is, you don't even like where you are. The job drains you. The relationship feels hollow. The city has become a cage. You know this. You feel it every morning when the alarm goes off and something in you sighs with a weariness that sleep never touches. Yet when the possibility of change appears, that same weariness transforms into something else entirely. A guard dog that wakes up snarling, a fortress that raises its drawbridge, a voice that says, "Not yet, not now, not like this." What if this isn't about change at all? What if it's about something much older, much deeper, something that was installed in you before you had words for it? You've probably noticed the pattern extends beyond the big decisions. It's there in the small moments too. The conversation you don't start, the opinion you don't share, the route you take to work, the same route, always, even though you've thought 100 times about trying the side streets. It's the restaurant you return to, the clothes you wear, the way you arrange your furniture and then leave it untouched for years. There's a comfort in repetition, sure, but there's also something else. Something that whispers that deviation, even tiny deviation, might crack open a door you've worked very hard to keep closed. You watch yourself in social situations, agreeing when you want to disagree, laughing at jokes that don't strike you as funny, mirroring the energy around you like a chameleon that's forgotten its original color. You edit your sentences before speaking them. You rehearse casual conversations. You calculate the risks of authenticity, and usually, quietly, you decide the price is too high. Not because you're weak or cowardly, but because somewhere deep in your nervous system, there's an ancient alarm that equates being seen with being in danger. People call you reliable, consistent, low maintenance. You show up on time. You don't make waves. You're the one others can count on to be exactly who you were yesterday and the day before that and the year before that. And it's true, you are those things. But what they don't see is the extraordinary amount of energy it takes to maintain that consistency. The constant monitoring, the vigilance, the way you scan every situation for potential disruption and then work, consciously or not, to neutralize it before it can touch you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action, that what stands in the way becomes the way. But what happens when the impediment isn't external? What happens when the thing blocking your path is the very part of you that's supposed to be navigating it? The truth is, you learned this, not in a classroom or from a book, but in the wordless education of early life, where survival depends on reading the room, predicting the storm, becoming small or still or pleasing enough to avoid the pain of disruption. Maybe your household was chaotic and consistency became your life raft. Maybe it was rigidly controlled and deviation meant punishment. Maybe the people who were supposed to provide safety were themselves unstable, and you learned that the only reliable thing in your world was your own ability to stay the same, to need nothing, to adapt to their changes rather than risk creating your own. Children are brilliant strategists. They don't have the luxury of understanding psychology or attachment theory. They just know what hurts and what doesn't, what brings connection and what brings abandonment, what feels safe and what feels like annihilation. So they adapt. They develop strategies, and those strategies work. They really do. They get you through childhood. They help you survive in an environment where you have no power except the power to shape yourself into whatever form seems most likely to keep you safe. But here's what happens. Those strategies, those brilliant adaptations, they get wired in deep. They become automatic. They move from conscious strategy to unconscious reflex. Your nervous system learns that change equals danger, that the unknown is where threat lives, that staying the same, staying small, staying predictable is how you survive. And it doesn't matter that the circumstances have changed. It doesn't matter that you're an adult now with resources and options and the ability to leave situations that harm you. The old program is still running. The war ended years ago, but your nervous system never got the message. Attachment theory gives us language for this. When your early caregivers were inconsistent, frightening, or absent, you likely developed what researchers call an insecure attachment style. For some, that means anxious attachment, constantly seeking reassurance and connection. But for others, it manifests as avoidant attachment, where closeness itself feels threatening, where independence becomes not just a preference, but a fortress. And woven through all of it is often a bone-deep terror of change, because change in childhood meant your already unstable world might collapse entirely. Change meant the rules shifted. Change meant you had to recalculate everything, learn a new dance, figure out a new way to be that might keep you safe this time. Your brain, miraculous and adaptive, learned to prioritize prediction over growth. The predictable, even if painful, became preferable to the uncertain, even if potentially better. Because at least with the predictable, you know where the danger is. You know what to brace for. The devil you know doesn't just feel safer than the devil you don't. Neurologically, it actually is less stressful. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm system in your brain, quiets down when it recognizes patterns. It lights up, floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline when confronted with novelty. There's a concept in psychology called the neophobia response, the fear of new things, but that clinical term doesn't capture the lived experience of it. It doesn't capture the way your whole body becomes a no, the way your mind, so creative and capable in other contexts, suddenly can only generate catastrophic scenarios, the way possibility feels not like an opening, but like a cliff edge. This is your old map trying to navigate new territory. This is a protection system designed for one kind of danger, trying to guard you against a completely different landscape.
Think of it this way. Imagine you're a guard, hired to protect a child in a genuinely dangerous place. You learn the threats, you develop protocols, you become hyper-vigilant, always scanning, always ready to pull the child away from potential harm. You're good at your job. You save that child over and over. But then the child grows up. The dangerous place is left behind. The adult that child became moves to a safe neighborhood, builds a good life, is surrounded by people who mean no harm. But you, the guard, you're still there, still scanning, still seeing threats everywhere, still yanking them away from anything unfamiliar, because unfamiliar meant danger in that old place. And you never learned that the rules have changed. You're not malicious. You're not even wrong, exactly. You're just using an outdated map. And the person you're guarding is starting to feel less protected and more imprisoned. The cost of this protection reveals itself slowly. You look around one day and realize you've built a life that feels more like a waiting room than a home. You're always preparing for some future moment when you'll finally feel ready, finally feel safe enough to take the leap, to try the thing, to become who you sense you could be. But that moment never comes. How could it? The very mechanism that's supposed to tell you when it's safe to move is the same mechanism that's convinced that safety only exists in stillness. Relationships suffer first, usually. Because relationships are change incarnate. They require you to let someone else's chaos touch your order. They ask you to be seen, really seen, which means revealing the parts of yourself you've worked so hard to keep controlled and contained. They demand vulnerability, which your system has long ago labeled as the ultimate threat. So, you choose partners who don't ask too much, or you don't choose partners at all, or you choose them and then slowly, subtly push them away the moment they get close enough to matter, close enough to disrupt the careful equilibrium you've built. Your potential atrophies in the waiting. The book doesn't get written. The business doesn't get started. The conversation doesn't happen. The apology doesn't get made. The risk doesn't get taken. And each time you choose safety over growth, the neural pathway that says stay the same gets a little stronger, a little more automatic. Your comfort zone doesn't just stay the same size, it actually shrinks, because every avoided change teaches your nervous system that you were right to avoid it. The danger was averted, that staying small is what kept you safe. Here's the particularly cruel part. Society often rewards this. You're seen as stable, dependable, not a complainer, not high maintenance, not one of those people who's always chasing the next thing, never satisfied, always causing drama. There's a whole cultural narrative that celebrates consistency and pathologizes change. Stay in your lane, bloom where you're planted. The grass isn't greener on the other side. Finish what you start. Don't be a quitter. All of these messages, well-intentioned perhaps, can become bars on the cage you've built for yourself. They give you permission to stay stuck and call it virtue. The shadow work here is particularly difficult because the thing you're afraid of is also the thing you long for. Part of you knows that staying the same is a kind of dying, that life is change, that to be alive is to be in constant transformation whether you choose it or not. Jung understood this. He wrote about how neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering, how we choose the pain of stagnation to avoid the pain of growth. But the pain of stagnation doesn't feel chosen. It feels like safety. It feels like wisdom. It feels like the only reasonable response to a world that has shown you over and over that change brings loss. What you exile into shadow is not just the fear itself, but the grief underneath it. The grief of the child who needed stability and didn't get it. The grief of the adolescent who needed permission to explore and got punishment instead. The grief of the adult who looks back and sees all the moments they chose fear over love, safety over truth, the known over the possible. That grief is heavy. It's easier to keep moving in the same circles than to stop and feel the weight of what all this self-protection has cost you. But here's what happens when you start to look at fear not as something wrong with you, but as an information about what you've survived. When you stop seeing your resistance to change as weakness and start seeing it as a protection system that once saved you but now limits you, the judgment starts to soften, the self-criticism quiets, and in that quieter space, something else becomes possible.
You are not the only one. This matters more than it might seem. The person next to you at the coffee shop, your colleague who always has an excuse, your friend who's been talking about leaving their job for 5 years, the family member who stays in situations that clearly harm them. They're not weak, they're not stupid. They're doing exactly what you're doing. They're running old programs. They're living with nervous systems that learned, in some formative moment, that change is the enemy and sameness is salvation. When you see this in others, when you recognize the same patterns playing out in different lives, it does something. It creates a bridge between your individual struggle and the universal human condition. We fear in others what we cannot face in ourselves. This is why rigid people are often most disturbed by spontaneity, why controlled people bristle at chaos, why people who fear change often judge those who embrace it as reckless or naive or irresponsible. It's not about them. It's about the part of ourselves we've had to exile in order to survive. The part that wants to be reckless sometimes, that wants to be spontaneous, that wants to burn it all down and start over. We see that freedom in others, and it threatens the entire architecture of safety we've built. But recognition creates possibility. When you see that your fear of change is not a personal failing, but a human response to early uncertainty, something shifts. When you understand that your nervous system is not broken, but brilliantly adapted to circumstances that no longer exist, compassion becomes available. Not the cheap compassion that excuses everything, but the deeper compassion that acknowledges the truth. You did what you had to do. Those patterns served you, and now, maybe, they don't have to anymore. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself, to form new connections and weaken old ones. This is not metaphor. This is measurable, observable biology. Every time you notice the fear, name it, feel it in your body, and then choose differently, even in small ways, you're creating new neural pathways. You're teaching your nervous system that change doesn't always mean danger, that novelty can be survived, that the unknown, sometimes, holds something better than what you already know. This doesn't mean becoming reckless. It doesn't mean ignoring genuine danger or making changes for the sake of change. It means slowly, gradually expanding your tolerance for uncertainty. It means taking small risks and noticing that you survive them. It means sitting with the discomfort of not knowing what comes next and discovering that the discomfort itself won't kill you. It means learning to distinguish between the voice of genuine intuition and the voice of old fear wearing intuition's clothes. You might start small, take a different route to work, order something unfamiliar at the restaurant, say the thing you usually edit out. Notice what happens in your body when you do these things. Notice the anxiety that rises, the urge to retreat back to familiar territory, and then notice too that you're still here, still breathing, still okay. Let your nervous system gather evidence that change can be survived, that sometimes, often even, it leads to something better. Reflect on the changes you didn't choose, the ones life forced on you. What happened? You adapted, didn't you? You found a way through. The job you lost led to something else. The relationship that ended made room for growth you couldn't have accessed while it was taking up all your space. The move you dreaded became the best thing that happened to you. Your history is probably full of evidence that you're more resilient to change than your fear wants you to believe. What would it mean to trust that resilience intentionally, to step toward change rather than only surviving it when it's forced upon you?
Consider what you're protecting by staying the same. Not just what you're afraid of losing, but what you're afraid of discovering. Maybe you're afraid that if you change, you'll find out the problem wasn't your circumstances, but something deeper, something that follows you wherever you go. Maybe you're afraid that if you become who you really are, the people you love won't recognize you, won't love this new version. Maybe you're afraid that if you reach for what you actually want, you'll fail. And then you'll have to face the possibility that you're not capable of the life you dream about. These fears are real. They're worth acknowledging. But are they worth the life you're not living in order to avoid them? Kierkegaard wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. When you stand at the edge of possibility, when you realize you could choose differently, the groundlessness of that freedom can feel more terrifying than any limitation. At least limitation tells you who you are, where you end, what's expected. Freedom asks you to define yourself, to step into the unknown without a map, to become the author of your own story rather than just the reader of someone else's script. That's vertigo-inducing. That's the dizziness Kierkegaard meant. But on the other side of that dizziness is life. Not the life that happens to you, but the life you make. The invitation here is not to become someone who chases change for its own sake, who mistakes instability for growth or impulsiveness for courage. The invitation is to notice where your fear of change has become its own kind of prison, to get curious about what you're protecting and what that protection is costing you, to consider that the very thing you're afraid of might also be the thing that sets you free. You're standing at the same threshold you were at the beginning. The job opportunity, the relationship, the city. Your chest still tightens, your breath still shortens, but now maybe you recognize that tightness not as truth, but as history, not as wisdom, but as an old guard doing its old job. You can thank it, you can acknowledge that it kept you safe when safe was what you needed most, and then, maybe, you can take one small step forward anyway, not because you're suddenly unafraid, but because you're willing to let your life be larger than your fear.
Rumi wrote, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." What are you being drawn toward? What have you been resisting because the pull feels too strange, too uncertain, too much like stepping off a cliff you can't see the bottom of? What if the fear is not a stop sign, but a signpost? What if it's marking exactly where your growth lives, where your life is waiting for you to claim it? You are not broken. You are patterned. And patterns, however deep, can shift. The door is there. It's always been there. The question is not whether you're ready. The question is whether you're willing to find out what's on the other side.